Hello, my name is Kathy Richardson, and I'm here today interviewing Zeina Ismail-Allouche. And I want to start by acknowledging that I am on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish in Parksville, British Columbia, where I grew up. And this is also home to the Qualicum and Snuneymuxw peoples. I'm not too far away. And just as a word of introduction, as I moved through my career as a counselor and social work educator, I realized I needed to start documenting some of the local knowledge that we have so it doesn't get lost or overlooked. So I invited Zeina to come and be interviewed by me. And Zeina is a researcher, scholar, currently living in Jojage, Montreal. And she's a social work and public educator, a human rights and child rights advocate, sorry, and a storyteller. And she's also a friend of mine. So, Zeina, I'm going to just pass it over to you and just get you to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about where you are and where you come from.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy, for this opportunity. I am honored to be interviewed by you. You're a wonderful colleague, but you're also an inspiring advocate for people with less visibility, as they call us. It seems visibility is an issue everywhere nowadays. I would like to mention that I am now in Jojolke, Montreal, and stating that I am on in unceded indigenous lands is always a call for myself, a reminder that I need always to tell the other side of the story. So this is where I am now. I come from Lebanon. I am always challenged with saying that I am Lebanese. It's mainly because Lebanon was colonized for long years. And somehow I carry within me that colonial um, uh, aspect of my identity that I learned here in Montreal, in Georgia, Montreal, to unsettle and unpack. And this is also with your support and with the support of many Indigenous scholars and knowledge keepers who helped me to do that. Mm.
Oh, thank you. So that could be a good segue into decolonization, but we won't start there. So, can you maybe tell a little bit about your journey and how you became such a fierce advocate, first of all, for children in Lebanon?
Yeah, it's children. I started there, but I am sort of connected with all children everywhere. And I am always reminded that an injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. On that perspective, I started my journey when I was myself a child. Lebanon was always experiencing wars and displacements. So as early as my 9, 10, 11 years, I was myself experiencing displacement, but also I found myself volunteering, working with other displaced children, helping them living through what they are experiencing. And now I can say it was a way also to accommodate my fears and my anxieties around being living in war times. So I started my professional journey working with children with disabilities, and bit by bit, I found myself working with UNICEF on children's rights from a UN perspective. And child protection was my main concern because at wartime, children suffer a lot. And yeah, slowly, I focused on children without parental care as being the most vulnerable children among all children as well. But I was mainly coming from a UN perspective that is, in a way, also colonized and has a lot of that aspect of seeing things from distance, not from the local perspective.
Mhm.
And then I moved to Yemen, where I worked with UNICEF as an international staff. And there I discovered the real meaning of being an outsider. Because even when I am an Arab, but I am not Yemeni, and I had to learn and see things from the perspectives of the Yemeni people to be able to be more ready to serve.
Mhm.
So in Yemen, I worked with children in alternative care settings that look more like prisons. And my awareness on the destiny of those children became deeper. And when I went back to Lebanon, I served as a national director of an organization that offers alternative care. It means like it was a residential care, and and that's real meaning. And my journey of self decolonization started there because I learned that this concept of separating the child from the family to be placed in a artificial space is full of risks that are much higher than the potential risks if they would have stayed with their families.
Mhm.
And the big question started why we invest in those services at the expenses of supporting families and especially mothers to take care of their children.
Mhm.
Um, and this was, yeah, the start of my advocacy work because it was going against the wind, against the popularistic wind that looks at like we are serving children without parental care, we're doing charity, this is a good cause, and we give money, we give support, we give love, but this is all just like masking the reality that we favor uh, institutionalization at the expense of supporting marginalized uh, women specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. I already can see a number of parallels. So, first of all, I was a disabled child, so maybe our paths would have crossed earlier if we'd been in a similar place. But one of the things that strikes me too is when I was growing up, I always heard in the background, oh, don't go to Beirut. It's such an awful place. And then I started hearing, oh, don't go to an Indian reservation. There's such an awful place, you know? So this is the parallel of um, then being an outsider and not really knowing, where you fit in. And then later, what brought us together, I think, were conversations around exactly. Stranger care, out of home care. Children are being horrified in these places and often running away and putting themselves in great danger. But for them, that's a better option than staying. And so we shared that passion of trying to, I don't even know if reform is the right word anymore, but just to explore why are we doing this and what could we be doing better. So that brought us together in Jojage, Montreal. And
Yeah.
so, do you want to tell a little bit about your work and how it prompted a transition across the world?
Yeah, actually, when I started working with this institutionalized services, and we had also the multiple wars in Lebanon, but in 2006, there was a huge attack on Lebanon. And during this period of time, um, I established a post-emergency program that was mainly calling for family strengthening
Mm,
and deinstitutionalizing children.
mm,
It means like bringing back children to their homes.
yeah.
In a way or another, I emptied 80% of the services that I was supervising, and this was against best interest of the board of directors. Because running an institution is also about business and money making. So it's an empire by itself.
Mm,
But my biggest uh, awareness there was related to children who were disappearing through illegal adoption.
mm,
At that time, I started witnessing the comeback of many individuals who were adopted out from Lebanon during the early years of war, the 70s. And they were coming back to Lebanon to search for their origins. And I established contact with those individuals, and through them,
mm,
I learned about the big um, black hole of child trafficking for illegal adoption that is run by the same mind that established institutional care in Lebanon.
mm,
And I had to reach out, I had to learn more. And then I started to dig for information. And I found myself opening that chapter of Truth and Reconciliation report in Canada. That was a discovery for me. I was in Lebanon there looking at that document where separating children from their families and from communities was mainly a war weapon.
yeah.
And the idea, the lived experience in Lebanon in a war setting and discovering adoption there, it made me think about the correlation between the two experiences. Um, while doing this, we uncovered some traffickers, because it's not only an experience of the past, it's something that is ongoing till today. We all know that's ongoing, and traffickers are surrounding us. So in a way, I started receiving threats, and life became a bit tough for us.
Mm,
And this was also a call for us to immigrate.
yeah.
And this is how I came to Johoki, Montreal, and the idea of this correlation between the local experience in Lebanon and the experience of indigenous peoples in Canada was being forced to separate from community, land, identity,
Mm,
and how assimilation uh, is used as a war weapon
mhm,
against communities, against the unwanted, undesired communities in Lebanon. These are mainly people coming from like impoverished families and spaces, but also in Canada, um, people who are mainly indigenous and their lands are needed and wanted.
mhm,
So, and I began the journey of my PhD, and it's an opportunity to acknowledge that the first door in Canada, in Montreal, that was ever open to me was an Indigenous door. And I always like to thank Elizabeth Fast, my supervisor, for that.
Thank you. Kudos to Elizabeth. So we'll stop part one of this interview here. And for those of you who'd like to listen to part two, you can just look for that on the Substack, and we'll see you again in a few minutes. Thank you.